Next, on to what's being called a mental health crisis among the nation's youth. 42 state attorneys general are urging Washington to put a warning label on social media platforms. Let's delve into this with Carl Szabo. He's the vice president and general counsel for NetChoice and a professor of internet law at George Mason University's Scalia Law School. We've seen social media moguls testify before Congress about the harms to their children, and now these attorneys general are uniting in this unprecedented move here. Would this warning label actually solve the problem? They say that it's not going to do that, but it's a first step.
Yeah, so we need to unpack a lot of the problems here. One is the policy problem, two is the constitutional problem, and three is the speech problem. So the policy problem, yes, kids like social media, but simultaneously, kids like Oreos. And if I, as a parent, were to leave my kid alone with a bag of Oreos, I shouldn't be surprised that they eat them all. No, what we need is more parenting, not government coming in and doing fig leaf actions like warning labels. Two is the legal problem. This is a huge violation of the First Amendment. In fact, a federal judge out in Utah just declared similar actions unconstitutional. The government cannot start deciding what speech is or is not allowed. And let's note, is it any different if somebody reads something on a newspaper, sees it on TV, or sees it online? No, the content is the same. Parents need to be involved. This is just putting a chilling action on free speech. And that leads into the third. This is really scary. Ultimately, you're asking the government, these AGs are asking the government to start telling Americans what content is or is not safe, what spaces are or are not safe. And that's really dangerous because now the government gets to decide which social media platforms are, quote, safe and which deserve warning labels. So this is a huge problem up and down the board.
Very interesting, Carl. I'm following what you're saying. Walk with me here. Cigarettes, they're addictive. We know that. They're harmful. They're not exactly like social media because they don't really do any good at all, but they are harmful. Do you support warning labels for cigarettes? Let's start there.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This actually was just noted by the federal judge out in Utah. There is no evidence that social media is a good or a bad. In fact, the Surgeon General's documents actually show that there's a lot of good that comes from social media. Cigarettes are all bad. Second, cigarettes are a physical medium. Speech is not. Speech is quite protected because I can look at a cigarette. I can know exactly how much nicotine's in it, what its carcinogens are. When it comes to speech, it's in the eye of the beholder. So ultimately, we are now asking the government to decide what speech is safe and what speech is unsafe. And that's where we need to all draw the line. There is a huge difference between a physical product and online speech.
Carl, I'm just trying to understand more about what you're saying here. You make a really interesting point. You're talking about speech, but I think what these attorneys general are pointing to are the algorithms that are so addictive. That might be what they're talking about here.
Yeah, and so let's take a moment. One, the use of addiction is a highly clinical phrase. My wife's a child therapist, and she gets really angry when I misuse that phrase. And I think a lot of these attorney generals are doing that. Two, the fact that people want to use a product is not a bad thing. In fact, this is like going to Hollywood and saying your movies are too entertaining, make them less entertaining. Or going to cartoons and saying the cartoons are too entertaining, make them less entertaining. Or your chicken McNuggets are too tasty, make them less tasty. And so the argument that, yes, people and businesses are designing products that consumers want and want to use, and making that illegal just doesn't make sense.
Okay, Carl, I hear you on this, and this is not the first time that there have been officials taking a stance against social media companies. In July, you saw the Senate overwhelmingly pass a bill to take steps to cause these social media companies to pare back the amount of bullying, the amount of sexual exploitation that's going on, and even drug addiction that's happening on these social media sites. So how do these attorneys general actions match up with the lawsuits that states are bringing against these social media companies?
Yeah, they're directly related. But the real problem is the attorney generals need to actually do their job of protecting minors. And what I mean by that is less than 1% of all reports of child sexual abuse material even get investigated, less than 1%. So these state attorney generals are coming out and saying we need to put warning labels on social media when in fact 99% of all the reports they get of child sexual abuse material online don't even get investigated. So here's the thing. It's hard to do the work of actually doing an investigation and prosecution and putting bad actors behind bars. That's what these attorney generals need to focus on instead of going after bogeyman of social media and trying to create this public policy fig leaf, which is really an attempt to control free speech online.
And Carl, are you aware that some actual adolescents spend over half their day glued to their phone?
Absolutely. Look, I'm a parent, and being a parent is hard. And it is our job as parents to actually decide what is or is not appropriate for our kids, how much time they spend on TV. So my son wakes up every morning, he watches several hours of SportsCenter, then he watches the Sunday football games. That's several hours of screen time for him. But I decide that screen time is okay. And so that's what we really need to do is we need to have parents come in and start deciding what is or is not the limits, start setting limits for our kids and not expect the government to come in and slap labels on whether some medium is okay and some medium is not. In fact, when my son watches ESPN in the morning, he sees ads for alcohol, he sees ads for gambling, and things that I find wildly inappropriate. Yet, we're not seeing warning labels on ESPN. So this is the problem. It starts with, quote, warning labels on social media, and then it's a quick, slippery slope into warning labels on what websites are okay, what TV shows are okay, and what content is okay.
Really fascinating perspective from you this morning, and it is a very important topic. Thank you for coming on. Carl Szabo, Vice President and General Counsel for NetChoice and Professor of Internet Law at George Mason University's Scalia Law School.
Thank you.